areas that you visited in
Yeah,
the north?
everywhere I visit around the country, that seems to be pretty standard. I'm not sure what the Nashville statistics are. It ought to be better here in Nashville because of the booming economy. But for most of the cities, and unfortunately, this is the thing that blacks have been caught up in for since Reconstruction. We always seem to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I mean, we go north, and then what happens? The cities are let go, and so we basically have, I guess, our largest numbers in New York and Chicago and Detroit and places like that. And now are the recipients of all the problems of the smokestack industries which have gone, and the labor kinds of jobs which are no longer available.
Well, as the leader of a very social conscious church, Dr. Smith, what do you suggest? What are some of the suggestions that you've heard that ought to be used in terms of dealing with the problems that we've talked about over the last 10 or 15 minutes?
Yeah. Doc Haney, I think one of the things we've got to do is we've got to find a way to mobilize a national network. We still, we have the NAACP and the Urban League and other very fine organizations. We still have yet to find a way to pull church folk together and those who are in the social action agencies, fraternal organizations. I just see a vast pool of alphas and omegas and kappas out there, and gosh, if they could be pulled in along with churches and community organizations, that's the first thing. It's got to be a national clearinghouse. We were getting close to that when Martin Luther King was alive with the SCLC. SCLC was something that most black Americans felt a kinship with, even if they weren't dues-paying members. But we really don't have that anymore, and it seems to me that's something that has to happen.
Are you suggesting that somehow we need a new national leader of the statue of Martin Luther King?
Well, I hesitate to say that because people like King and Gandhi and others of that ilk, come along once every several hundred years if you're fortunate. I'm not sure another Martin Luther King is on the horizon, but it seems that if we could follow a model similar to our Jewish brothers and sisters, where there is, it does seem to be more of a national fraternal feeling that certain issues can be addressed nationally, even though within the ranks of Jewish people there are certainly the conservatives and the Orthodox and everything else. But when it comes to issues of the vital security of the nation of Israel and of the economic wherewithal of Jews internationally, that the Jewish organizations can pull together, it seems, and speak a bit more comprehensively than we do. And it seems that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Would love to see another Martin Luther King come along, but don't think that's going to happen.
Okay, given the fact that there won't be another Martin Luther King, what about leaders on the local level? That is, instead of having a national leader, a leader on the local level. Yeah. And what would be some of the suggestions that you would have in terms of developing that kind of leadership here in Nashville and perhaps as a prototype in Memphis and all across the state?
Well, that's an interesting question. Nobody's ever asked me that before. I think a city like Nashville, Atlanta might be in the same place, would have a real potential to develop leadership of persons who can assume political, religious, organizational leadership through the black schools. I think places like Fisk, Morehouse, TSU, when you start naming, you always hesitate for fear you're going to leave somebody out, but those schools, I think, really have both the history, the vital faculties, Meharry, places where leadership can be trained. And see, now that may be a way in which a national network could be pulled together. But black schools everywhere could cooperate.
Now, some of these institutions that you've mentioned are what we call historically black institutions, Dr. Smith, as you undoubtedly know, and they are faced with many problems themselves in terms of their own viability and indeed in terms of their own existence. Now, what would you suggest in terms of dealing with something like that?
Well, see, again, that goes back to that whole some kind of national network. We've got to find ways to get money circulating within the black community, find ways to use our earning power to share some of the dollars that we command with black institutions. Now, basic fact, we as black people tend to be poorer than our white counterparts, so we don't command as much money. But we do have enormous earning power. Yeah, I've heard all kinds of figures about where Black America stands economically in relationship to other countries. Some sovereign states don't have the buying power Black America has. All right, well, if we could find ways to help Black persons be a little less inward and narrow in their use of monies, and maybe a little less interested in purchasing the house of our dreams or whatever, and really start investing that money back into Black communities, into Fisk and places like that. It seems to me that's one way. Now, how to get that message out is tough, because what you're dealing with is Black folk face the same same negative stimuli as do all persons. We live in a consumer, materialistic oriented world, and Black folk, like everybody else, want the best in American society. And most human beings don't, if given their druthers, would not sacrifice their climb up the ladder for bigger contributions to charitable causes. And yet and still, that seems to me that's what we've got to try and do, and get Black people to...
Well, it seems that from that point of view, Dr. Smith, it would be almost hopeless in terms of helping to, trying to improve the condition of the Black population.
Oh, no, I think if, that's, if we give up hope, we may as well, just fold up our tents.
Well, now, how does a church operate within that framework?
Okay, the church has been the hope institution. The church is the place where Black people have found a sense of overcoming. The genius of Martin Luther King was he was able to take an old Black spiritual, and tie it to this freedom and liberation theology, and help people to catch fire by just taking what has been the tradition in the Black church, and that is preaching, singing, praying about hope, and turning it into a practical application. The church's role, I think, is to make sure that we don't despair. If we start despairing, we're going to be in tough shape.
Now, your church is already involved in quite a bit of activity outside of the religious sphere, is it not? I think you've got a home for the elderly.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, could you tell us something about that over the last couple of minutes that we have?
Okay. One of the things I think which really excited me about the possibility of coming to First Baptist Capitol Hill is that it is a church with a tremendous reputation for being in the forefront of the issues of justice and social change. And I think that if churches like ours can provide leadership, give examples to churches around the country, that Black church historically has been on the cutting edge. When significant social action has happened in this country, it has been born in the Black church. And if churches can understand the potential that we have, if we can mobilize, and even just earning power, when you look at the collections that come in on Sunday morning throughout this country in the Black churches, if that money could be used for some positive community building, just think of what could be done.
Very well. And I think we're just about near the end of the program, Dr. Smith, and we're simply delighted to have had you here with us this evening.
Oh, it's
and
my
we look
pleasure.
forward to working with you in the days to come.
Okay,
This is Dr. Haney bidding you good night for Black Pulse.